I never had much patience for the gym. Too many mirrors, too many people pretending they weren't watching themselves. I went a few times when Lisa first got into it, just to humor her, but it wasn't for me. The grunting, the clanking weights, the artificial smell of protein shakes and sweat, it all felt like a place for people who wanted to be seen. Lisa, though, she loved it. Said it made her feel strong, confident. Said she needed it. I figured, fine, let her have her thing. Every marriage has its separate interests. It was harmless at first. A few evening workouts a week. An occasional Saturday morning session. I never thought twice about it. But then it started creeping in, taking up more space. First, it was the extra sessions. Early mornings before work, late nights after dinner. Then the longer hours. I got caught up in a class, she'd say. Lost track of time. It was believable. The way she came home flushed and breathless, sweaty, full of energy, I thought maybe the gym was just that good for her. But then the little things started standing out. Her workouts got longer, but she wasn't exhausted. If anything, she seemed more alive than ever. The kind of energy that didn't come from lifting weights or running on a treadmill. She smiled more, laughed more, just not with me. Her phone was always face down when we ate dinner. She used to leave it lying around, charging in the kitchen, but now it was either in her hand or tucked away in her gym bag. If I walked into the room when she was texting, she'd lock the screen without thinking. And then there was her trainer, Darren. The first time she mentioned him, it was casual. Darren says my form is improving. I nodded, not thinking much of it. But then she started saying his name more. Little comments here and there. Darren really pushed me today. Darren says I need to stretch more. Darren showed me this new routine. Darren, Darren, Darren. I started picturing him in my head without ever having met him. Some overly muscled guy, tanned, probably shaved down to his last hair, smiling too much. The kind of guy who lived at the gym, who made a living convincing people he cared about their fitness when he really just liked the attention. I told myself I was imagining things, but the feeling didn't go away. It got worse the night I saw her leaving. I had the day off and figured I'd surprise her, maybe pick her up after her session. I drove by the gym around the time she usually finished, parked across the lot. I expected to see her coming out, tired but happy. Instead, I watched her linger in the doorway, talking, laughing. She wasn't just stretching after her workout. She wasn't just cooling down. She was standing too close to him. I saw him then, Darren, just like I expected. A walking cliché. Muscles bulging under a tight shirt, grinning like he was used to women hanging on his every word. And Lisa, my wife, was acting like she was one of them. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't confront her then. Not in the parking lot. Not when she finally got home, almost an hour later, breezing through the door like nothing was wrong. She tossed her gym bag onto the chair, pulled out her water bottle, and acted like she hadn't just been laughing with some other man while I sat in the car feeling like an idiot. I watched her silent, my jaw tight. She had no idea I had seen her. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But my fingers curled into my palm, nails pressing into my skin. I would find out exactly what was going on. And when I did, there wouldn't be any quiet, polite conversations. This wasn't just about the gym anymore. I barely slept that night. Lisa came to bed late, as usual, slipping under the covers like she had nothing to hide. I could hear her breathing, steady, peaceful, like she hadn't been standing too close to some muscle-headed trainer just hours earlier. I lay there staring at the ceiling, jaw clenched, feeling the weight of everything I'd ignored for too long. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. I had no proof, just a gut feeling, and gut feelings weren't facts. But gut feelings don't come out of nowhere either. They're built from the things you see, the things you hear, the things you know in the back of your mind but don't want to admit. And right now, my gut was screaming at me. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work like nothing had changed. She hummed a little under her breath while picking out her clothes like she was in a good mood. Probably looking forward to her next gym session. Probably looking forward to him. I fought the urge to say something right then and there. I wanted to demand an explanation, to throw last night in her face, to wipe that careless little smile off her lips. But I didn't. Not yet. If I was going to accuse my wife of cheating, I needed more than just suspicion. I needed something undeniable. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started watching her. Not just noticing things here and there, I mean watching. I paid attention to every detail, every little habit, every excuse. I started tracking the time she left for the gym, how long she stayed, how often she mentioned Darren. And the more I watched, the more obvious it became. Her workouts kept getting longer. She wasn't just hitting the treadmill or lifting weights. She was staying there, lingering. And when she came home, no gym talk. It used to be all she talked about, how she felt stronger, how she hit a new personal best. But now nothing. Like she didn't want to give me too many details. Then there was her phone. She had always been the type to leave it on the table, face up, not caring who saw her notifications. Now, always face down, always locked the second she set it down. And when it did buzz, she'd glance at it, then casually slide it into her pocket like it was nothing. I wasn't stupid. Then came the night that erased all doubt. She had told me she was going to an evening class. Something new, she had said, a longer session. I nodded, pretending not to care. But this time, I wasn't just going to sit around waiting for her to come home. I waited 20 minutes after she left, then grabbed my keys and followed. The gym wasn't far. Just a few blocks away, a sleek glass and steel building that stayed open late. I parked across the lot, same spot as before, and waited. I expected to see her inside, maybe stretching in front of the mirrors, lifting weights, running on the treadmill. But she wasn't there. Darren was. I saw him near the entrance, laughing with some other trainer. Relaxed, not coaching, not working. Just standing there, talking. If he was here, just hanging around, where was Lisa? The answer hit me before I even wanted to admit it. I scanned the parking lot, looking for her car, and sure enough, it was there. Parked on the side, away from the gym's main entrance. But she wasn't inside, and she wasn't in the gym. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I sat there, waiting, heart pounding, blood boiling under my skin. Minutes passed, then more. No sign of her. And then, finally, movement. The side door of the gym cracked open, the one that led to the back lot where the staff parked. Lisa slipped out first, glancing around, tucking her hair behind her ear like she was nervous. Darren followed a second later. He stood too close. She looked up at him, smiling, whispering something. He laughed, and then her hand touched his arm. A soft, lingering touch. A touch that had no business happening. That was all I needed. I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt. My hands clenched into fists. Every muscle in my body tensed, ready to move, ready to march over there and wipe that smug grin off his face. But I held myself back. Not because I wasn't furious, I was burning with it, but because I needed to know just how deep this went. I watched her walk to her car, waving at him like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't coming home to a husband who had just watched her flirt with another man. She drove off, probably thinking she got away with it, probably thinking I was still sitting at home, clueless. She had no idea. By the time I pulled into our driveway, she was already inside, moving around the kitchen like it was just another night. When I walked in, she glanced up with a smile. "Hey, babe," she said, like she hadn't just been sneaking around in the shadows with someone else. Like she wasn't making me look like a damn fool. I forced a breath through my nose, unclenching my jaw just enough to respond. "Hey," that was all I said. I didn't trust myself to say more. Not yet. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. Now I knew. And soon, so would she. The moment I walked through the door, I knew I had to play this smart. If I lashed out right away, if I grabbed her by the shoulders and demanded to know what the hell she had been doing sneaking around with her trainer, she'd just deny it. She'd act like I was crazy, like I was imagining things. That's what cheaters do. They lie until the very last second. So I stood there, taking in the sight of her, pretending I didn't already know. She looked fresh, too fresh for someone who had just finished a so-called workout. Her face was glowing, her hair was still neatly tied up, and I didn't see a drop of sweat on her. It was like she had changed before she came home, scrubbed away any evidence of where she had really been. "Hey, babe," she greeted, that fake warmth in her voice. I just nodded, setting my keys on the counter. My heart was hammering, my blood burning, but I couldn't let her see it. Not yet. She turned back to the fridge, acting casual, pulling out a bottle of water like this was just any other night. "How was your class?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She didn't even hesitate. Tough, she said, twisting open the cap. Darren really pushed us today. I'm sore already. She said his name so easily. I gripped the edge of the counter, staring at her, wondering just how many times she had stood in this kitchen and lied to my face. How many times had she come home after touching him, laughing with him, God knows what else, and then sat across from me at dinner like nothing was wrong. I felt sick, but I still didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I just nodded, playing along. Yeah. I said, what kind of workout was it? She blinked, caught off guard for half a second, but then covered it up with a casual shrug. Mostly weights, she said. Some circuits, too. You know, the usual. Bullshit. I had just watched Darren standing around doing nothing at the gym. He wasn't running a class. He wasn't training anyone. And Lisa sure as hell wasn't in there working out. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt, forcing myself to stay calm. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to throw her lies right back in her face. But I needed to wait, because if she was bold enough to look me in the eye and lie, then this wasn't just some one-time mistake. This was something deeper, something worse. She took a sip of her water, then leaned against the counter, looking at me like nothing was wrong. How was your night? She asked. I stared at her, watching the way she tilted her head slightly, the way her lips curved, just a little like she had no idea that I had been right outside that gym, watching. Oh, same as always, I said. Nothing special. And I meant it, because this night wasn't special. This was just another night where my wife came home to me after being with someone else. But the difference was, this was the last time she'd get away with it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lisa fell asleep easily, like she didn't have a care in the world. Her breathing was soft, even peaceful. Meanwhile, I lay next to her, staring at the ceiling, my mind running through every possibility, every outcome. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted to ruin her. I wanted her to feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal that was eating me alive. I wanted her to look me in the eyes and know she had been caught, that she wasn't going to lie her way out of this. But I had to do it right. A normal man might have just kicked her out right then and there, screamed at her, called her every name in the book. But I didn't want just an argument. I wanted proof. I wanted to back her into a corner so deep that there was no escape, no lie she could twist her way out of. So I made a plan. The next morning, I was up before her. I sat at the table, drinking my coffee, waiting. When she finally walked into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, stretching like she had all the time in the world, I forced myself to look at her like I always did. Like I didn't know. She gave me a sleepy smile. Morning. Morning, I said back, sipping my coffee. She poured herself some, then leaned against the counter, taking a sip. You're up early. I shrugged. Figured I'd start the day sooner. Then I set my cup down, giving her a casual look. You going to the gym later? Yeah, she said easily. I might stay a little late again. Darren's working on a new program for me. Her voice was so smooth, so natural. If I hadn't seen what I saw last night, I would have believed every word. I nodded, playing along. Cool. Maybe I'll stop by. Her grip tightened just slightly around her mug. Barely noticeable. But I noticed. Why? She asked, trying to sound casual. I smiled. Just curious. Thought I might try working out a little. She let out a small laugh. You hate the gym. That was true. But I wasn't planning to actually work out. I was planning to watch. Still, I just shrugged. Figure it couldn't hurt. Lisa sipped her coffee, glancing away for half a second. Well, I'm probably going to do a pretty long session today, she said. You sure you want to sit through all that? She was trying to shake me off. She didn't want me anywhere near that gym. That told me everything I needed to know. I took another sip of my coffee, then leaned back in my chair. I'll think about it, I said, smiling. I had just set the first trap, and she had no idea she had already walked into it. I spent the entire day keeping myself busy, keeping my face neutral whenever Lisa walked into the room, making sure I didn't give her a single reason to suspect what was coming. She acted normal, too normal. If she felt even a little guilty, she sure as hell didn't show it. Maybe she had convinced herself I'd never figure it out. Maybe she thought she was smarter than me. That was her first mistake. Lisa left for the gym right on schedule, tossing a casual "see you later" over her shoulder as she walked out the door. I waited exactly 10 minutes before following. I didn't park at the gym this time. That would be too obvious. Instead, I found a spot down the block, just out of sight but close enough to watch. I kept my head low, my hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting. If she had just gone inside and done what she said she was going to do, I might have still had a fraction of doubt left. Maybe she really did love working out. Maybe it was all just in my head. But the universe wasn't about to let me fool myself. Because 20 minutes later, I saw her slip out the side door again. Same as before. Only this time, Darren wasn't just standing there talking to her. This time, his hand was on her waist. My entire body went rigid. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. The way she looked at him, the way she leaned into him slightly, her hand brushing against his chest like she belonged there, told me everything. She was smiling. Smiling like a woman who wasn't married. Smiling like she hadn't just walked out on a man who had spent years breaking his back to build a life for her. And then, as if I needed more proof, he leaned in and kissed her. Right there, in the open, like they had nothing to hide, like I was already out of the picture. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too small of a word. This was something deeper, darker. I sat there, staring at the two of them, and something inside me snapped. I had spent days, maybe weeks, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things, that my wife, the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, wasn't doing what I had feared. But now there it was. The truth. Plain as day. And that's when I realized something. I didn't love her anymore. I hated her. Lisa didn't come home for another 3 hours. When she walked through the door, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a glass of whiskey, staring at the wall. She didn't notice anything was off. "How was your workout?" I asked, my voice even. She didn't even hesitate. "Brutal," she sighed, setting her gym bag down. "I think Darren's trying to kill me." She let out a small laugh, stretching her arms over her head. "I'm probably going to be sore for days." I almost laughed. Almost. She poured herself a glass of water, acting like this was just another ordinary night. Like she hadn't just spent the evening in another man's arms. Like she wasn't standing in front of the one person who was about to destroy her whole world. I stayed quiet, swirling the whiskey in my glass, watching her move around the kitchen, listening to the sound of her voice, knowing it was all a lie. Every word. Every damn word. She turned to me, smiling. "What?" she asked. "You look weird." I smiled back. "Oh, nothing," I said. "Just thinking." And I was thinking about how this was going to end. Because now that I knew for sure, now that I had seen it with my own eyes, there was no way in hell I was letting her get away with it. I barely heard anything Lisa said for the rest of the night. I just sat there, watching her, taking in every little movement, every lie that left her lips like it was second nature. She told me about her so-called workout, the new exercises Darren had introduced her to, how exhausted she was. I didn't call her out. Not yet. Because I wanted to see how far she'd take it. I want to know just how deep she was willing to bury herself in deception before I pulled the rug out from under her. She went on, sipping her water, stretching her legs like she had actually done something, like she wasn't just pressed up against another man an hour ago. And I just nodded along, throwing in the occasional or "that sounds intense" to keep the conversation moving. Let her think she was safe. Let her think she was winning. Because once she got comfortable, once she let her guard down completely, I was going to rip the illusion apart. Lisa went to bed before me, stretching her arms over her head as she yawned. "You coming?" she asked as she headed toward the stairs. "Yeah," I said. "In a bit." She nodded and disappeared down the hall, leaving me alone in the dim light of the kitchen. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, gripping my whiskey glass, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I wasn't the kind of man who could just let something like this go. Some guys might have tried to forgive, might have begged for answers, for apologies, for explanations. But I didn't need any of that. I already knew the truth. And I didn't give a damn about her excuses. I finished my drink, set the empty glass down, and finally stood up. There was something I needed to do. Lisa was asleep when I entered the bedroom. Or at least, I thought she was. Her breathing was soft, steady, her body curled up under the blanket, her hair spread out over the pillow. I stood there for a moment, just watching her, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. This was the woman I had built a life with. The woman I had trusted. The woman I had fought for, sacrificed for. And she had thrown it all away for him. For a damn gym trainer. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I had spent years loving this woman, but in this moment, I felt absolutely nothing for her. No love, no pity, nothing. I turned and walked to the closet, grabbing the small lockbox I kept on the top shelf. Lisa stirred slightly, shifting in bed, but didn't wake up as I carried it out of the room. Good, because when she did wake up, she'd realize her life was about to change forever. I sat in the living room, the lockbox on the coffee table in front of me. Inside was everything I needed. Our marriage certificate, joint account statements, investment records, all the things that legally tied us together. And soon, all the things that would be torn apart. I wasn't just going to confront her. I wasn't going to scream at her, demand answers, or let her weasel her way out of this with some half-assed apology. I was going to end this. I reached for my laptop, opened my email, and started typing. A message to a divorce attorney. Short, direct, no emotions, no unnecessary details. Just the facts. Because that's all that mattered now. Lisa had already made her choice. Now it was my turn. The next morning, Lisa woke up to the smell of coffee. She walked into the kitchen, stretching, running a hand through her hair, completely unaware of what I had done the night before. Morning, she said, yawning. Morning, I replied, keeping my voice normal calm. I slid a cup of coffee toward her, watching as she took a sip, still half asleep. This was the last morning she'd wake up in this house, thinking everything was fine. I took my own cup and leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. She didn't know it yet, but the next time she came home from the gym, the locks would be changed. Her excuses wouldn't matter. Her tears wouldn't matter. Because I had already made my decision, and I wasn't going to change my mind. The morning went on like nothing was wrong. Lisa sipped her coffee, scrolling through her phone, probably texting him, probably making plans for later. I watched her, studying every detail, every little movement, memorizing the way she sat there so calmly, so at ease, so utterly unaware of what was about to happen. I wanted to say something then. I wanted to grab her phone, slam it on the table, and ask if she had any idea what she had done. But I held back. Let her have her moment of peace. Because soon, she was going to lose everything. She left for work like usual, gave me a kiss on the cheek, had the audacity to kiss me on the damn cheek before heading out the door. As soon as I heard her car pull away, I grabbed my laptop. The first thing I did was confirm the email I had sent last night. The divorce attorney had already responded. He wanted to set up a call later in the afternoon. I typed back a short reply, agreeing to the meeting. Then I started the next step. I logged into our bank account. We had a joint account, but I also had a personal one she had never paid much attention to because she had never needed to. She had always trusted me to handle the money. Big mistake. I transferred every single dollar from our joint savings into my private account. This wasn't revenge. This was strategy. I wasn't about to let the woman who had been sneaking around with another man walk away with a cent of what I had worked for. Once the money was secure, I started making the real moves. Utilities? Transferred to my name only. Mortgage? Same thing. I called the bank, started the process of freezing the credit card she used. By the time she realized what was happening, she wouldn't even be able to buy herself a cup of coffee. And then, the final touch, changing the locks. I made a quick call to a locksmith, set an appointment for later that evening. Everything was in motion. By the time Lisa came back from her workout, she wouldn't be stepping into our home, because by then, it wouldn't be hers anymore. The rest of the day passed in a haze of cold efficiency. I had my call with the attorney. He walked me through the next steps, the paperwork I need to file, the timeline of what to expect. I told him I wanted this done as fast as possible. No drawn-out negotiations. No reconciliation. I wanted her gone. He agreed to start the paperwork immediately. By the time I hung up, the locksmith had arrived. I let him in, watched as he removed the old locks and installed the new ones, listened to the metallic clicks as he tested the fresh keys. Lisa's key would be useless now. The house was mine. Everything was falling into place. All that was left was her. The moment of reckoning came at exactly 8:17 p.m. I knew the sound of her car, like I knew my own heartbeat. The soft crunch of tires on the driveway, the low hum of the engine as it idled for a second before shutting off. I didn't move from my spot at the kitchen table. I just waited. A few seconds later, there was the familiar jingle of keys. Then silence. Another few seconds passed. Then, the rattle of the doorknob. I smirked. Lisa jiggled the handle harder. Then the knocking started. I waited until I heard her voice. "Babe," she called, her voice muffled through the door. "What's wrong with the lock?" I took my time standing up, walked slowly to the door, making sure she could hear my footsteps. Then, just as I reached it, I didn't open it. Instead, I leaned against it. Silence stretched between us, thick, suffocating. Then she knocked again, louder this time. "Babe," she said, a little more urgent now. "Did you change the lock? What's going on?" I exhaled through my nose, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Then, finally I spoke. "Why don't you ask Darren?" Silence. I knew that hit her like a bullet to the chest. She recovered fast, though too fast. What are you talking about?" I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "Cut the crap, Lisa. I know. I saw you. I saw everything." More silence. Then just barely a shaky breath. "Babe, I don't know what you think you saw, but don't." I snapped, my voice dropping lower. "Don't insult me. Don't stand there and pretend like I'm an idiot. I watched you walk out of the gym with him. I watched you touch him. I watched him kiss you." More silence. This time, it stretched long enough to feel like an eternity. Then finally, her voice weak, trembling. I was drunk. I closed my eyes, letting out a slow breath through my nose. Of all the pathetic excuses, she went with that one. Drunk. I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. I don't even remember it," she stammered. "I swear, babe, I don't even—" "You're pathetic." That shut her up. I could practically feel the panic creeping up on her now, the realization that this wasn't going to go her way. I twisted the lock, yanked the door open just enough to look her in the eyes. And what I saw, fear, not because she was afraid of me, but because she was afraid of losing me. Losing this house. Losing the life she had gotten so damn comfortable in while sneaking around behind my back. "Go," I said, my voice void of emotion. She swallowed hard. "Babe, please. Go." I didn't wait for her to argue. I stepped back, closed the door in her face, and locked it again. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the sound of her fist against the wood. "Babe, please, we can talk about this." I didn't answer. She kept knocking, then pounding, then screaming, begging. But I didn't open the door. Not this time. Not ever again. By the time she finally left, I was sitting on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing. The sound of her car pulling out of the driveway barely even registered. I had done what I needed to do. And now I was free. Lisa was gone. For the first time in years, the house felt quiet, really quiet. No humming from the bathroom while she got ready. No footsteps pacing around the kitchen. No fake laughter filling the air. Just silence. And I liked it. I sat on the couch for a long time, staring at the ceiling, the final echoes of her pounding on the door still ringing in my ears. She had begged. She had pleaded. She had thrown out every excuse she could think of. I was drunk. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. But none of it mattered, because I wasn't listening anymore. For once in my life, I wasn't trying to fix things. I wasn't trying to rationalize or forgive or figure out where it had all gone wrong. I wasn't asking myself if I could have done something different, if maybe I had failed her in some way. I was done. The next morning, I woke up alone. It was strange at first, opening my eyes to an empty bed, rolling over and not seeing Lisa curled up beside me like she had every morning for years. But the longer I lay there, the more I realized I didn't miss her. I didn't miss her at all. I got up, took a long shower, and let the hot water wash away the last traces of her touch. By the time I stepped out, I felt lighter, like something toxic had finally been drained out of me. Lisa had always been a constant presence in my life, but now, she was just gone. And instead of feeling hollow, I felt relieved. I checked my phone. Missed calls. Lisa, 14 missed calls. Lisa, for new messages. I stared at the notifications, debating whether I should even bother reading them. But curiosity got the best of me, so I opened the first one. "Please, just talk to me. We can fix this." The second one. "I know I messed up, but I love you. Don't do this." The third. Can we meet somewhere? Just to talk. Please. I'll explain everything. And finally, the last one. You're being unfair. I actually laughed at that one. I was being unfair? She had been sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face, letting another man touch her, and I was the unfair one. I deleted all the messages without responding. Let her wallow in it. Let her sit in the mess she made. That afternoon, I met with my attorney. He had already drawn up the first round of paperwork. You sure you want to move this fast? He asked, looking at me across his desk. Yes, I said without hesitation. Because once we file this, she'll know you mean business. She can know whatever the hell she wants, I replied. Just make it official. He nodded and slid the papers across the desk. I didn't hesitate. I took the pen, flipped to the last page, and signed my name. That was it. Lisa was no longer my problem. A few days passed. Lisa didn't stop trying. The calls kept coming. The messages didn't stop. I ignored every single one. Then, on the fourth day, she showed up at the house. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I heard the knock. I knew it was her before I even looked. For a moment, I considered not answering, just letting her stand out there like a fool. But then I figured, why not? I wanted to see the look on her face when I told her, to her face, that there was nothing left to save. I walked to the door, opened it, and there she was. She looked like hell. Hair messy, eyes red and puffy like she had been crying for days. Can we talk? She asked, her voice hoarse. I crossed my arms. About what? Us, she whispered. Everything. I stared at her, dead in the eyes, letting the silence drag out long enough for her to feel it. There is no us, I finally said. Her lip trembled. You don't mean that? I let out a dry chuckle. You really think I'm just going to forgive you? She swallowed hard. I wasn't thinking. I made a mistake. I tilted my head. A mistake. I repeated. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the stove. A mistake is missing a bill payment. What you did, that was a choice. She shook her head, desperate. It didn't mean anything. It was just. I cut her off with a sharp laugh. Spare me. She flinched. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You want to know what the worst part is? I asked. She swallowed hard. What? I smiled. A cold, humorless smile. I don't even hate you anymore. Her brows furrowed. What? I shook my head. Hating you would mean I still care. And I don't. I shrugged. You're just nothing to me now. She looked like I had slapped her. Tears welled up in her eyes. You don't mean that. I leaned against the doorframe. You should go. She took a shaky breath. Please, just give me a chance to fix this. I exhaled slowly, looked up at the sky, then back at her. No. Her face crumbled. I love you, she whispered. I smiled again, but this time it was genuine. You love yourself, I said. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. She opened her mouth, probably to throw out one last excuse, but I didn't give her the chance. I shut the door in her face. Lisa didn't come back after that. The text slowed down, then stopped completely. The calls dried up. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. She didn't fight for the house. Didn't fight for the money. I think she knew there was no winning after what she did. And me? I was free. I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. Didn't drown myself in whiskey or wallow in self-pity. I just moved the hell on. Because at the end of the day, she was the one who lost everything. Me? I just got my life back.